Yes, I know, we're beating a dead Miltank at this point. We've looked at quite a few of these strategy guides on the channel, some for Pokemon, some not for Pokemon, and different variations of the same game even. This time we have the official Nintendo Power guide for a little game called Pokemon Emerald version. Ever heard of it? It doesn't get more Nintendo than the official Nintendo Power guides, with all the clues that you can use and extra bits of information like the Hoenn Pokedex, items we can find in the region, and of course, a fully intact berry page. Now, I'm somewhat of a connoisseur of Pokemon Emerald version. I still have my pre-order bonus tin in this little book that came with it, and I'm currently even shiny hunting on Pokemon Emerald using a DDR dance mat, so my hands are free to Masuda method hunt in Sword and Shield. Yeah, I shiny hunted for one video last year, and this is what my life has become now. I won't be using the DDR dance pad for this video, but I will be using the guide of course, so let's take a look inside. Starting off, we have the basic controls. Hoenn is enormous. You'll be running, biking, flying, battling, and chatting your way across its vast landscape. No mention of water travel, but then we learn how to press some buttons which I would be lost without, learn about the world of Pokemon including May, a spirited lass, then a showcase of types with starter Pokemon. Next, we have a section explaining Pokeblocks titled The Breakfast of Champions, but all I had for breakfast today was a bowl of Cheerios and a Red Bull. For abilities, it explains them as natural talents, then showcases Spinda, a Pokemon notorious for being talentless, and then some sample teams. I'm going to reference the effective team as closely as possible, since if you're new here, the whole point of these videos is to follow these guides as closely as possible while trying to ignore my prior knowledge of Pokemon as much as I can. If you think that's cool, then consider subscribing and checking out my other non-Nintendo related videos, which are still pretty good as well. I stream some of my recordings live on Twitch as well if you want to see a behind the scenes look at some of these videos, and also check out this very cool and very legally distinct shiny blue blob merch that I launched recently, linked all in the description. Continuing along, we learn where the wild Pokemon are, learn how to catch Pokemon, where it even tells us about abilities that attract more wild Pokemon like Arena Trap and Survival of the Weakest, where we learn about Switch training. Overall, this intro is 25 pages, which is a bit shorter than other guides being over 30 pages typically, but it's very concise and goes very in-depth with Pokemon mechanics. I'm somewhat of a Pokemon nerd if you couldn't tell, so I love reading about Pokemon mechanics. Let's just whip out my copy of Pokemon Emerald that I got on release day almost 20 years ago, geez, I really am ancient, and hammer away at the Hoenn region the way Nintendo intended. We start off in our new house where the guide says to pick up a potion, and I also notice it mentions tasks you can complete later on in the game here, like talking to our mom after beating Norman to get the amulet coin. It's not much of an issue at this point of the guide, but when the guide references everything you can do as soon as you reach that point of the guide, it gets confusing since by the time you would be able to do said thing, like in this case get the amulet coin, we would probably forget, and flipping back and forth to see everything you can do at different points is quite annoying. I definitely prefer it when guides go in a concise pattern, or at least tell you to flip back to a certain page for a certain point, but this guide just doesn't do that. After meeting our rival, May or Brendan, we save the professor and pick Trico as our starter Pokemon. I picked it mainly because Sceptile was on the sample team, and on the back of the guide it says Trico evolves to Sceptile, so it seemed like a pretty good option. Next, for the bustling town of Oldale, featuring a whopping 4 buildings and a total of 3 people outside, very bustling indeed, we get the potion promotion and continue north for Rival Battle 1. We fight with our Trico that I named Subscribed against our rivals Torchic, then after returning to the lab and speaking to the professor again, we venture out on our journey for real now. The first thing we learn about is berry trees on Route 103, my favorite of course, where it even references the Altering Cave, which is an area that was never fully functional outside of Japan and doesn't really have much of a purpose in the English games, but strangely it doesn't outline the wild Pokemon we can catch here or even tell us to catch a Pokemon. It is nice when guides outline all the wild Pokemon found on each route and suggest certain Pokemon to catch, but I guess if you really wanted to, you could check out the back of the guide and see what everything is on, although it doesn't tell you in route order, just tells you in Pokedex order where every Pokemon can be found. I figure we have to catch Pokemon since, you know, it's Pokemon, so I caught a Wurmple early on named Flick, then make it to Petalburg City. Here it says to stock up on supplies and talk to our dad to help Wally catch his very first Pokemon. It shows the gym battle here, which we can't do quite yet, so let's progress over to the Petalburg Woods and defeat this sorry grunt saving this Devon employee. This Devon employee is one of my favorite random side characters in Pokemon because all he does is get in random trouble, ask you to fix it, then give you a Great Ball as a reward for saving him and just not getting fired. On the other side of the woods, we learn about the flower shop and how later on you can return here to get the white herb, which I didn't know you could do. Learning things like that are some of the benefits of using guides, since that can be useful in a future playthrough or even in a Nuzlocke challenge. I switch trained the Wurmple we caught a bit here, and then read ahead a bit to the part about Rustboro City where it says we could trade a routes for a Seedot, so I check where to get routes, go back to get it, then trade it for dots the Seedot once making it to Rustboro City. The key thing we have to do here is fight Roxanne, the Rock-type gym leader. The guide suggests Grass-type Pokemon and Water-type Pokemon, so our lead Trico is perfect here, but also says how Makuhita is a good choice as well as being a fighting type. The issue with Makuhita is the first chance we have to catch one is in the Granite Cave, which we can't access till after we get the first gym badge. They might be confused with Mach-It, which is the trade Makuhita you can get in Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire version that Emerald version replaced with this silly acorn thing. With our first gym badge in hand, we have to save the Devon Corporation Employee of the Month again, as well as Pico, the Wingull. The Devon employee then asks us to deliver something to Steven in Dewford Town, but he doesn't tell us how to get there or even give us a method of transportation to get there, despite being an employee of like the richest company in the region. Flick evolves into Beautifly shortly after because it's a Bug's Life baby and assists us in the Rustboro City rival fight. The next page then shows Water Route 105 and then the Island Cave where you get Regice. You pass this while on Mr. Brownie's ship, but the guy didn't tell us to go back to his house here. A few pages back when we first came across his house, it did say how we can hitch a ride from him to go to Dewford Town and to Slateport City, so we run back to his place and sail across the seas into the township of Dewford. The first thing we do here is get the Old Rod. With the Old Rod, you control for Pokemon in the waters around Hoenn, though some Water-type Pokemon are a bit too big to catch. Next it shows the Granite Cave where I have to deliver a letter to Steven, and I also caught a Sableye here because I ran into one while venturing through it and remembered that it was on the sample team. Here we also have to Flash Action where we get the Flash HM, the most annoying HM in all of Pokemon, and now we can prepare for Brawly's fighting type gym. The guide suggests flying types and psychic type Pokemon, so Beautifly should work well here with Gust. Interestingly, it doesn't say anything about ghost type Pokemon being good here, specifically Sableye, even though it would be great here and you can catch one very close by. I just used Beautifly to beat Brawly in 2 Shakes of a Lamb's Tail for our second gym badge. Now we can set sail for Slateport City where there's a few small things we can do and most are optional, so once clearing out Team Aqua we can catch an Electric on Route 110 and have our third rival fight. It recommends Electric, Flying, and Water type, so we have 2 of those 3. It then says if you are having a difficult time defeating your opponent, spend more time training your Pokemon in battle. I never thought of that strategy, but with our rival defeated we continue into Mauville City. Here we can get a bike, learn about gambling, don't gamble kids, the house always wins, and thwart Wally's aspirations by demolishing him in a battle. Sorry buddy. Now for Watson's Electric-type gym, the guide suggests Ground-type Pokemon for his Electric-type Pokemon, and to keep our Water and Flying-type Pokemon in the back or they'll get zapped, so sorry Flick, it's not your time to shine. I checked the back of the guide for Ground-type Pokemon we can access, and there's Nincada, which doesn't seem like the best option since it evolves into not a Ground type, so that just leaves Geodude. Since I want to follow the guide as closely as possible, and I'm trying to do that a bit more with this video specifically, I go all the way back to the Granite Cave just so I can have a Pokemon with a good typing against Watson in Geodude of course. I figure as long as I have at least one of the recommended types, we're good. With a full team of 6, including Dots and Sableye, which I haven't used at all, we can train up our Pokemon, including the Dude on the nearby cycling road. Even though we go in a little bit underleveled, the Dude does what the Dude does best and magnitudes all over Watson's Intrepid team for the 3rd gym badge. The guide showcases New Mauville next, which we can't even visit yet, then Route 117. We'll return here later for something you probably don't expect. But for the time being, we clear out all of the trainers and head into Verdanturf Town. There's really not much we could do here besides seeing, do your Pokemon like you, and if only there was a way to see if she really likes you too, so after seeing Wally and his family again, we head over to the routes north of Mauville City. There's a lot to do here as well, like check out Trainer Hill, except we can't because Trainer Hill isn't open yet at this point of the game. Bummer. Part of the reason why there's so much to do on these next 2 routes is because you can return to them multiple times. Right now, we only have access to a small portion of the southern part of the route, which includes the Wind Straits. Then we have to go through the Fiery Path to reach the other side and go into Route 113. There's snow like volcanic ash here, as well as this man who works with glass and is constantly coughing and huffing. We all know what you're really doing here, buddy. Who are you trying to fool? In Fallarbor Town, we learn about Professor Cosmo and how he went to Meteor Falls with Team Magma. The guy notes how something smells fishy about that, and it wasn't just talking about your mom. For the Meteor Falls, it shows Magma versus Aqua and even shows the Steven fight you can do here in the post-game. It then shows a bit of Route 115, although we need Surf to fully explore it, so I just wrap around and go towards Mount Chimney. I notice it suggests Water-type Pokemon for Mount Chimney, so on the way I ran into this Marill and just added it to the team. For Mount Chimney, we see Team Aqua and Team Magma fighting, then have to help Team Aqua even though they're evil and literally just invaded a museum like 5 minutes ago. For the fight against Maxie, we hit most of the recommended types except for Psychic, since we were told to trade our routes for this silly little seed that has no Psychic type moves, and we have no Psychic type moves on our other party members. It also says not to use Grass type Pokemon, so Grovyle will have to sit this one out. This fight was a little close and we barely won, but with Team Magma cleared out, we can now go to the Jagged Pass where Marill evolves to Azumarill and Geodude evolves into Graveler. This connects up to Laveridge Town, where we can get some herbal Pokemon remedies that I'm sure that guy near Fallarbor Town who loves making things out of glass would absolutely love. Then we can soothe ourselves in this hot spring and get a Pokemon egg. Next on the agenda is to fight Flannery's gym. She's pretty hot. Wait a sec.
How old is Flannery Pokemon?
Okay, that's cutting it a little bit too close, but she is a fire type trainer, and fire types are pretty hot. The guide suggests ground, rock, and water type Pokemon, and we have all 3 of those. 2 of them are on the same Pokemon, but it still counts. We bring some healing items as suggested, but Azumarill and Graveler are just too strong and put out her flames. Next, we have a lot of backtracking and can enter the desert, get a fossil, watch this building collapse into the sand forever, and have Electric evolve into Manectric on our way back to Petalburg City to fight our father, Norman. We flip back a lot to get to Norman's section in Petalburg City, where the only recommended type is fighting. Makes sense since he only uses normal type Pokemon, and since I want to follow the guide more closely this time, I look at the Pokedex and see the easiest fighting type Pokemon for us to get right now is Machop in the Fiery Path, so I go back there and pick one up. I actually lost the first attempt against Norman when I didn't have Machoke with us, but now that we have Machoke, this fight goes by a lot easier for Gym Badge number 5, and I sure do feel alive. After the Petalburg Gym, we flip around and see Route 118 and Route 119. Here we have some pro fishing and a tall grass tangle leading us to the Weather Institute invasion. Here we don't help Team Aqua, instead we fight them, and then get this cast form. Hell yeah. After the Weather Institute, we fought our rival for a 4th time and make it into Four Tree City. The citizens here really like flying type Pokemon apparently, so much so that this one person wants to trade you for a Minun if you give him a Volbeat. Not only is this a pretty mediocre trade, but we have to get a Volbeat, which is all the way on Route 117 and only a 1% chance to encounter it. This took me a little while to find just so we can trade Roman for his pluses. That's a pretty cute name, almost as cute as these Plusle and Minun plushes that I got as a kid, but there are other electric type Pokemon we can get for Winona's flying type gym, but since we got pluses, might as well use it as well. I have to replace our trusty Beautifly named Flick for it, thank you so much for your service Flick, then head in to fight Winona with 2 electric type Pokemon and a rock with 4 arms. The guide specifically suggests moves like Thunder and Rollout, and we don't have anything with Thunder, and Rollout isn't really that great of a move anyway, as Graveler has Rock Throw instead. We're still able to use our type advantages and make Hop from Galar proud for our 6th gym badge. Next we have to go to Route 120, see the Scorched Lab briefly, as well as Registeel's home. What's up, buddy? Along this route we learn of the Bug Maniac's treasure, which is where if you fight this one bug type trainer 5 times you will get a silver powder. Honestly, have no idea how the guide writer found that out, unless they battled every trainer in this game at least 5 times. There's also this rare berry girl, which sounds like my type of girl, and these meddling kids known as Team Aqua who are up to no good at Mount Pyre. The next page showcases the Safari Zone, which we can't get into yet because we don't have a Pokeblock case, so instead I flip to the next page and head to Mount Pyre in Route 123. I did Route 123 first because I always thought this extra area was cool, and I still remember the first time I discovered it as a kid. You don't have to go to this area at all, but there's a decent bit of exploration to do here, and I really like areas like this that were more common in the older Pokemon games. Next in Mount Pyre, we get the Cleanse tag, which repels wild Pokemon if we give it to the lead Pokemon of our party. This is a nice item to save time for wild encounters. Then once clearing out pesky Team Aqua and seeing these idiots get the wrong orb, like I wonder why it wouldn't be the blue orb for the blue Pokemon, right? We continue along to Route 123. On this route I caught a Wingull so we can fly around now and continue to Lily Cove City. Here we have Hoenn's Most Wanted, which isn't as cool as it sounds, this is just a Pokemon fan club, as well as another rival fight in front of the department store. At this point I wanted to go back to the Safari Zone, however I noticed the guy didn't tell us how to get the Pokeblock case, which is needed to go to the Safari Zone. I know you can get the case in the contest hall here, but unless I missed it, there's just no mention of where to get it. It does detail the Pokeblock Master's house right next door, but that doesn't give us the case. The next page confused me a little bit, but I was able to figure it out, and even if I hadn't played this game 100 times already in the past, I think I would have gotten it thanks to the guide and the game dialogue alone. The next page shows Team Aqua's hideout, but we really have to go to the Team Magma hideout near Laveridge Town first. The Aqua grunts in this Aqua base mention it though, prompting me to go back there and flip back there in the guide to see this part. Here we fight some Team Magma grunts leading to Maxie, and the guide warns us of Mighty Enna's swagger. I don't think this dog has that much swag, but once defeating him, Maxie wakes up the beast, allowing us to return to the Team Aqua base and go and fight them. I always thought this base was weird because you don't fight Archie in it, instead you fight this random admin guy who then just jumps into the water. With the evil teams out of our hair for now, we can surf eastward through some forgotten booty into Moss Deep City. Here the guide makes note of nest balls, which we could buy now, as well as Tate and Liza's psychic type gym. Grovyle evolves into Sceptile right before it, and of the 4 recommended types for this double battle gym, we have 2 of them in grass and water, which is pretty solid. We do at least have a dark type attacking move and bite on Manectric, and although I tend to struggle against Tate and Liza sometimes in Pokemon Emerald version because of their screens and calm minds, we're still able to hammer away and get through them, then assist Steven in the Space Center against Team Magma. Following that altercation, the guide shows Route 125 in Shoal Cave, which we can't explore at the moment because the tide is too high. Once we get the Dive HM from Steven, we can now surf south and dive to the Seafloor Cavern. The guide says how this area was untouched by humans for countless ages, which makes me wonder how there could be TMs here as well as Ethers, which seem like a more recent technology in the Pokemon world. We go through it anyway, pumping the Aqua grunts for information. Really wish someone would pump me, but it eventually leads to Archie. Sharpedo is easily dispatched by fighting type moves, and we also have Manectric for his water type foes. After we're rudely left in the rain by Steven in the middle of the water nonetheless, we dive on over to Topless City where these 2 titans are fighting. I think Kyogre might have the edge here. We're told to go to the Spear Pillar next to awaken Rayquaza, who should be able to fix this disaster. The guide even shows Mirage Island here on the way there, and no matter how hard I tried as a kid, I was never able to see Mirage Island before. Now that Rayquaza is done scolding Kyogre and Groudon, we can fight Juan in his water-type gym. Arguably the most forgettable gym leader in these early Pokemon games because he only appeared in Emerald version and briefly in the PWT in Pokemon Black and White 2. He didn't even make the cut for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, but we do as the guide says and use beefy grass types and brawny fighting types for the 8th and final gym badge. The next page features some optional routes and then the sealed chamber, which when looked at in full view top down, it looks rather interesting. Then finally we see Evergrande City and the Victory Road. Here we have a Wally fight where he has an actual team but is still no match for us. Continuing the Victory Road, we have a fork in the water and the guide tells us about one path at point D, but it looks like this surprised face and I thought that was pretty funny. Nonetheless, we're able to make it through the Victory Road and make it to our final test, the Pokemon League. Our team isn't exactly the same as the recommended team, but it's still pretty powerful and diverse enough. I did think about bringing back that Sableye we caught very early on, but we never used it, and even though Sableye was on that sample team earlier, I just rolled what we have and fight Sydney. Sydney uses Dark-type Pokemon, so fighting types are recommended. We have to be careful of his random Psychic-type moves like his Shifty with Extra Sensory, and no offensive Dark or Grass-type moves. After that we have Phoebe and her Ghouls, which Manectric really shines for with Bite. She was a bit annoying, and the guide even suggests Steel-type Pokemon defensively to get through her. Then for Glacia, we wash her with fighting and electric-type attacks against her chilling strategy, leading us into Drake, who certainly is not like us. His Dragon-type Pokemon are pretty annoying, since this is the first time we can't hit a key trainer for one of the recommended move types, but we get through him leading us to the champion, Wallace. We match up pretty well with our starter Sceptile and our Manectric, and eventually get to a point where it's just our starter Sceptile against his last Pokemon Ludicolo to get the victory, meaning we beat Pokemon Emerald version how Nintendo intended, thanks to this official Nintendo Power Strategy Guide. Overall, the guide was pretty solid, had no glaring mistakes, but the lack of showing which Pokemon were available on each route and area and constant flipping back and forth was a little bit annoying. Either way, if you enjoyed this video, I recommend you subscribe and check out my other videos since I upload much more than just my intended videos like these videos here. Oftentimes when I go months without uploading an intended video, I would get comments from people acting like I haven't uploaded in months, not realizing I upload other content, but I've always been here uploading other types of videos that I'm sure you'd also enjoy. With all that out of the way, thank you so much for watching, have a great rest of your day, I'll see y'all next time, and bye-bye.